All right, guys, let's try this. Let's see how this works, how this looks. Um, okay, until I figure this out, I'm just going to go with this screen here because I don't know how to make this full screen. No? Okay. All right. It's not supposed to look like this, guys, but I'll go with this. Seems like when I learn something new, then something else pops up. I did something in the program, but I don't know how to make it bigger. So, okay, we'll go with this for now. There is a way of doing this, but I just don't know how to do it. And I didn't even know how I did this before. Camera. I'm showing full screen, but this. Oh, wait a minute. Oh. Okay. I know. Hey, son, I know. I don't know where that is. The screen share options. Okay. Yeah, I don't know where the screen share options are, but all right. I'll correct this on the next study, guys. Uh, all right. Yes, everybody's telling me to see it. All right. So I will do that. I'll correct this. I'll correct the screen on the next option right here. All right. So we're in Second Thessalonians, and we're going to talk about end times. Paul through Paul's revelation. And what is good about Paul's Second Thessalonians and actually his other teachings is that, remember, we see prophecy in each generation, you could say, or not generation, but in each, I'm going to say this for lack of, in each age, we see there's a prophetic voice that speaks to that age. Okay, so as I said, when you start with the Old Testament and you start with the book of Isaiah, which kind of began the prophetic voice countdown, one to Israel's doom. Isaiah spoke to that generation. Jeremiah spoke to his generation, or age, you could say, with the actual death of the nation. And then Ezekiel and Daniel, so forth and so on. Jesus, in the 24th chapter of Matthew, gave a prophecy about speaking right to prior to the birth of the church. And then all of that have in common God's plan and purpose for Israel. So now when we come over into the New Testament church, by the way, John, it's interesting because the book of Revelation speaks to that generation or age as we are now leaving the first century church. The keys of the kingdom, as it were, or the church, are being passed over to the next generation. And so you see John speaking to that generation. So each generation, you can say, is speaking from one perspective and then moving forward. So Isaiah, you can almost say, kind of speaks from the beginning. Then we see Daniel, who, as he's speaking from the generation of the Babylonian, so we see the full human form or body picture. Remember in this prophecy, in the second chapter of Daniel, you see this human form, this human body, which represents all of the major kingdoms till up until Jesus comes. So what you have is all prophecy leads to the second coming of Jesus. All prophecy, everything ends there. Okay, so in each age, what you see is the prophets adjusting. Even Daniel himself, when you look at Daniel chapter 9, let's say Daniel chapter 9, he's already passed from the Babylonian kingdom or empire to the Medes and Persian. So as in the 24th chapter of Matthew, Jesus is speaking of, or we're doing this week 69, right? We're right at the prophetic week 69, Daniel's prophetic week 69, where he's going to get cut off. But yet we know the 70th week hasn't happened yet, so he's speaking to that generation. The Apostle John is speaking past those events. In other words, the Jesus that's cut off. Jesus' prophecy about Jerusalem has come to pass some 25 years from John's perspective. And so now he's speaking the message to the seven messages to the seven churches. And then he speaks what? Of the end times, or the 70th week. And then, of course, the book of Revelations conclude with the coming of Jesus Christ and the ushering in of the eternal age. Okay, so Paul is kind of prophesying with the perspective of the mystery that God did not reveal in times past. So whatever your I think prophecy or eschatology perspective or position, and whenever you kind of think that, okay, you know, we're in the end days, and you hear that a lot from people, that we're in the end days. Remember when President Trump signed the peace deal, people immediately went into end time modes, like, okay, this is it. Even though the peace pact, in my opinion, had any prophetic relevance, and if it did, wouldn't it be a sign of destruction? In other words, when they say peace, peace, sudden destruction comes upon them. So, but you have to understand then prophecy from the New Testament revelation. And so in the second chapter, I think Paul, he puts this together, I think only as God can. All right, so last time, I'm going to start back in verse 1 and read through again for continuity. He says, now concerning the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ and our being gathered together unto him. Now again, I see this as two incidents, the rapture of the church and the second coming of Jesus Christ. As I just said, all prophecy leads to the second coming of Christ. And a lot of times we are crying out for justice. We are crying out, why is there evil in the world? Why do we have, how come God doesn't just swoop down and stop the evil? Well, he is in his day. He's just not going to respond. He's not responding to sometimes our whimsical notions. All right. But he is coming. And you're not going to like it. Well, I feel like the world's not going to like it. He says, we ask you, brothers, not to be easily upset in mind or troubled, either by us or by message or by letter, as if from us, alleging the day of the Lord has come. So again, right now, this is what God is saying to us today, right now. Now watch this. So if you want to know what God is saying, he just said, we shouldn't be all up in arms, and every time a news event happens, we throw up our hands in rapture position. Paul says you shouldn't get upset, you shouldn't get trouble, as if a message from us that's the day of the Lord is at hand. Now, He's getting ready to tell us how we will know when the day of the Lord will happen. In fact, he's going to let us know several things that's going to happen up until when Jesus comes. Verse 3, he says, don't let anyone deceive you in any way, for that day will not come. Now, remember last time we talked about what the day of the Lord is. It is a period of time when Jesus will pour out God's wrath. He is going to bring into account all of man's sins. So we go back to Daniel's human form, which represents man's time, okay, through 4 major world-dominating kingdoms. But you see, all of that is man's times, the wickedness of man, the evilness of man, culminating with Jesus destroying that image, or man's time, and then judging. So the day of the Lord is when God speaks, but he first speaks with this day of wrath. Jesus referred to this time, and one of the markers he said was when you see the abomination that makes desolate. Paul here is saying he's going to give us again clues. Remember, they were concerned. People were telling them that the rapture had already happened, or their loved ones dying, but they would miss the rapture, miss the second coming. He says, don't let anybody deceive you, because now he says that day will not come unless the apostasy comes first and the man of lawlessness is revealed, the son of destruction. So there's 2 markers when we can know when the day of the Lord will happen. 2 markers. All right. The first mark, he says, is the apostasy. So the word apostasy means to revolt against, to leave. And a lot of people have sort of translated this or interpret this as that there is going to be a great backsliding against God. And that could be true from a particular perspective. So like, for example, today you see a decline in Christianity. People are leaving the church. So people can say that's the apostasy. And that could be true. I think the bigger issue becomes, were these people ever Christians? Were they ever truly born again? Okay, so that would be a question to ask. What's going to happen? Let me read something from Matthew chapter 20. I'm gonna start in 24 and see if I can find it. I might go to 20. Here it is. Matthew chapter 24. And this is Jesus speaking. It says, now concerning that day and hour no one knows, neither the angels in heaven nor the Son except the Father only. And this is important here, as the days of Noah were, so the coming of the Son of Man will be. For in those days, meaning the days of Noah, before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day Noah boarded the ark. Now that's kind of an interesting statement right here. Notice he says they were eating and drinking, meaning life was going on. Now you see this consistency here. The reason why I say that is because people forget now 20 years ago that there was a mass hysteria called Y2K. And back then, people feared. Somebody began to say, "Hey, guess what? You know the numbers on the computers, the zeros won't they won't translate over, and when they do that, it's going to cause a major catastrophe. That all the computers all over the world is going to shut down." And what they were predicting was that it was going to be a kind of post-industrial age, post-technology. Everything was going to shut down, and there would be this cascade effect of just mass shutting down. And then, of course, there were churches that sold survival equipment, survival food, package, all that kind of stuff. But people were terrified that, and people were stocking up, of course, and people were saying that this could be the end times. Again, and what was amazing about that was this was almost kind of across the board. Usually end time predictions come from certain people, from certain denominations, but this was kind of perpetuated across the board, that people were, even good men of will were kind of suggesting that this could be end times, and that we was going to go through a kind of a post-industrial age. There would be no electricity, no running water. There would be no banks. People would so you'd have to learn how to live on the land and all kinds of stuff. People were having survival classes. Pot-belly stoves were being sold. Okay. The one thing that was always in the back of my mind was I just couldn't get past that greed would allow a couple of zeros to lose out trillions. I guess you can say I had more faith in man's greed. Okay. Besides the fact I couldn't afford any of the survival packages of those times, which even then was about $10,000. The reason why I'm saying this is because now when you kind of study scripture right here, the economy is going to be fine up until Jesus comes. Think about that. They're eating and drinking. If you go and read the book of Revelations, the last one of the last judgments is in chapters 17 and 18, which is the economical structure of this great city called Babylon, this wicked city. And if you go back and you read those chapters, what you find, it is commerce. And God, with one swift blow, destroys it. But he destroyed it then. So that's what I'm saying. When we kind of read what's going to happen, oftentimes, sure, can there be recessions? Obviously, can there, can different things happen all over the world at different times? Yes. But never anything of a worldwide that's going to stop commerce. So he says right here, again, verse 38 again, for in those days before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day Noah boarded the ark. And they didn't know until the flood came and swept them all away. So this is the way the coming of the Son of Man will be. Okay, now the reason why I read this is because, and you go back and you read what were the days like during Noah, and anytime you see a major judgment from God, and you look at the conditions of the judgment, okay, there is a pattern. Now the reason why I say that is because there are people today who would say that America is facing judgment. One of the reasons why they say that is because of the high abortion rate, right? Some 60 million aborted babies, okay? And that is bad, right? That is murder. The problem with that is a Republican conservative talking point, that people think God is a Republican. And here's the point. No, he's not. Okay, he's also concerned about a lot of things Okay, not just aborted babies, but a lot of things. And while wickedness is growing, can you say that we have reached its fullness? So the fact that Jesus said it will be like in the days of Noah, during this time in Noah, keep in mind, we don't know how many were on the population of the earth. It certainly could have been in the millions. If you look at a certain kind of timeline of around 2,000 years, if you're dating, it's hard to tell with genealogies. Genealogies are not as accurate in terms of trying to predict a number. And of course, we don't even know a number because the Bible doesn't give us one. But whatever the population of the surface of the earth was at that time, remember, only 8 people survived. Only 8 people survived. Noah and his family. So so whatever it was, and what the Bible describes is that there were total wickedness. Man was full, and you see these terms, that man was full of wickedness, that the thought of his imagination was evil constantly, all the time, constantly. And this is kind of the wording that you see scriptures using, that man was just so full of, and you see violence was at a high. Just total depravity, okay? Total depravity. So that is the conditions. So if you say, well, God's going to judge America, we're nowhere near that, right? I mean, just think about the Christian population. And so a lot of times people may, they say, oh my dear, my Lord, look what's going on. The gays, abortion, and they turn on a gay pride parade and they clutch their pearls and stuff. Okay, but it's not like you have the gay pride parade every day, and you stop and think about the gays, congregate like a lot of things. They congregate in certain cities and in certain sections of the city. Even if you go to San Francisco, they congregate in one part of San Francisco, even though, there's a lot of gays there. And I guess now Atlanta, right? If you go to Atlanta, it's not like every, square mile of Atlanta is now gay. My point is, people react, but back during the time of Noah, everyone, okay, all the time was evil. And these are the conditions that will happen, that will be ripe for the wrath of God, not just a few. And it won't matter who's preaching, okay? It won't matter. So, so back in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, so he says, this apostasy, in verse 3, don't let anyone deceive you in any way, for that day, meaning the day of the Lord, will not come unless the apostasy come first, then the man of lawlessness. Now you could have some discussion as to what will create the atmosphere, the conditions of this apostasy. Okay, what will the rapture of the church? We're going to get to the rapture of the church in a moment, but will the rapture of the church create that? Because, like I said, even now, yes, things are bad, right? You can hardly turn on television. You can hardly watch a television program where you won't see a gay character. Now they're pushing transgender. But while we focus on that, remember, we have passed, remember, just fornication, right? Easy, fornication, adultery. We don't even talk about that anymore, right? Lying, stealing. We these things have been in Hollywood. But my point is, even with all of that, just remember, we're not all bad. That's just, again, one part of it. Okay? So even when you see people saying that there's a war on Christian and there's religious liberty, no, there's not. There's really not. Every Sunday people go to church. Millions of Christians attend church, right? Every Sunday, right? You can turn on. You have, I think, at least 10 or 11, maybe 12 Christian television networks on cable. So we're far from kind of this kind of persecution of the church. We're far from that, okay? So yeah, we could discuss how would the world get to this state of apostasy where people are voting against God, okay? And that's why I say even now, let me just as a sidebar throw this in because people are you hear people talking about I'm not going to take this COVID vaccine, and the reason why people are saying that is because I guess there is this kind of tracker, right? Now, for decades, people have been talking about computer chips in conjunction with the mark of the beast. And again, there is no scripture that says that the mark of the beast is a computer chip. Now, I wouldn't take a computer chip because I don't want a computer chip in me for any reason. But I wouldn't take the mark of the beast because it might be, I wouldn't take the computer chip because I fear that it's the mark of the beast. And here's the thing, that the mark of the beast can be as simple as a mark. I mean, really, literally, the Bible doesn't say it could be a permanent marker that they literally scribble on your head or on your forehead. Now, without a doubt, yeah, it may be something more sophisticated than that, but understand that it's just a mark. But with the mark of the beast, what's going to be different about that, and this is why I'm not afraid of any kind of mark, a government mark, even if right now, if they came out with some type of mark and said that you could, if I pull out my debit card, right, that I use now for cash, right, but let's say, okay, instead of credit, in fact, right, we can use phones now, right, as credit and cash and cards and all that kind of stuff, right? You could actually pull up your card and swipe and transaction, right? So let's say, well, you know what? We'll put it on your hand. Now here's what I'm saying. I wouldn't take it because I don't want the government in my business, right? I don't want the government tracking me. But here's why I wouldn't take it, because I'm fearing that that's the mark of the beast. You're not going to accidentally take the mark of the beast. So what I'm saying is they're two separate things. You cannot be tricked in taking the mark of the beast. It's not going to be in some of the Christian movies where you take the mark of the beast and all of a sudden, what have you done? And then this person looks at, what have I done? Oh my God, what have I done? What have I done? No. You cannot be tricked into taking the mark of the beast. The mark of the beast would be a conscious revolt against God. So when people take the mark, it is in your face God. So that's the difference there. All right, so he says that they will not come unless the apostasy comes first, and that man of lawlessness is revealed, the son of destruction. So the man of lawlessness then will mark the 70th week, the 7-year tribulation period, in which we know that he signs a covenant for a week, and then in the middle of the covenant, he breaks the covenant. All right. Now, so this man, okay, will be a world leader, okay. And so again, notice he's called the man of lawlessness. So I think some of your translations, King James says man of sin. But watch this. He's not called the Antichrist. People have kind of given him that name, and that kind of took over the decades. He is a Antichrist. John's definition, however, of Antichrist is anyone who goes against the doctrines of Christ. So anyone can be an Antichrist on that level. But this man, he's really the two most famous. He's the man of sin, or the man of lawlessness, or son of destruction, or the beast. Those are some of the words. And he will be a world leader who will rise during this 7-year tribulation period. One of the characteristics of this man, and again, let me just say some other funny things that how silly people are. There are people who every time a world leader comes on the scene, they deem him as the Antichrist. I remember when Ronald Reagan became president, people thought he was the Antichrist because of his name, Ronald Wilson Reagan, 666. Okay, and yet at the same time, when Gorbachev, the Russian leader, they thought he was the Antichrist because Gorbachev had a little birthmark on his forehead, and they go, "Oh no, that's the Antichrist." So we can be very silly when it comes to these kind of things because we're not reading Scripture. He will be, and then let me just also say this: if you're a fan of Christian movies, you know he won't sneak. He will not be a person, and let me read verse 4. He won't be timid, right? He won't by subterfuge and kind of sneak his way in. Okay, this is why verse 4 says he opposes and exalts himself above every so-called God or object of worship, so that he sits in God's sanctuary, publicizing that he himself is God. Okay, so one of the marks of the man of sin will be he will be arrogant beyond belief. See if I can find him in Daniel. Daniel chapter 8, I think I want. Daniel chapter 8. No. I'm going to start reading about verse 23. So near the end of their kingdoms, I'm trying to see insolent kingdom of a tree. He will, his power will be great, but not with his own. He will cause terrible destruction and succeed in whatever he does. Is he will destroy the powerful along with the holy people. I'm starting reading here. This is kind of a characteristic of this man of sin. His power will be great, but it will not be of his own. He will cause terrible destruction and succeed in whatever he does. He will destroy the powerful along with the holy people. He will cause deceit to prosper through his cunning and by his influence, and in his own mind he will make himself great. He will destroy many in a time of peace. He will even stand against the prince of princes, yet he will be shattered, not by human hands. Okay, so this is kind of one of the things. Notice the arrogance of him, how arrogant he is. Then we see in Daniel chapter 9 where it says he makes a covenant for a week and he breaks his covenant. I want to see there's one other. As you can see, Daniel gives us a lot of information about the man of sin. So in Daniel chapter 11 and in verse 36, he says, then the king will do whatever he wants. He will exalt and magnify himself above every god, and he will say outrageous things against the God of gods. He will be successful until the time of wrath is complete, because what hath been decreed will be accomplished. He will not show regard for the gods of his father, and the God longed for by women, Now, some people think he might be a homosexual by this statement, but I don't think so. I think he's just, you can see he's going to be so driven. He won't have, again, his power will be what drives him. Verse 38, instead he will honor the God of fortress and the God his fathers did not know. Some people by this think he's Jewish. That's to me not conclusive. He says, with gold, silver, precious stone, and riches, he will deal with the strongest fortress, and with the help of a foreign god, he will be greatly honored. He will greatly honor those who acknowledge him. Oh, sounds like our president, but no, he's not. Our president is not. Making them rulers over many and distributing the land as a reward. He goes on in a lot of detail. I'm going to go to the book of Revelations, chapter 13, which is kind of interesting in that John deals with him. And I'm just going to kind of read through this chapter. This chapter is really, and think about it, it is an entire chapter that he devotes to this man of sin. Excuse me. And I saw, this is chapter 13, and I saw the beast coming up out of the sea. He had 10 horns and 7 heads, and on his horns were 10 diadems, and on his heads were blasphemous names. The beast I saw was like a leopard, and his feet were like a bear, and his mouth was like a lion's mouth. Now get this. The dragon, and we know the dragon is Satan, the devil. The dragon gave him his power, his throne, and great authority. And on his head appeared to be, one of his heads appeared to be fatally wounded, but his fatal wound was healed. And the whole earth was amazed and followed the beast. No, it is not going to be our president. It is not talking about that. The reason why I say that is because people are silly to make this connection. Another thing is, for a long time, people thought that the way people read this is that the man of sin will be shot in the head or wounded in the head, and that he will be resurrected and thus declare that he is God. You go back and you read that, he says one of his heads, and by the way, the heads that he was referring to is one of the kingdoms. There are 10 kingdoms that he will rule over, and then these 10 kingdoms will be a world rulership. Now, we just read in Daniel chapter 8, remember, where he says that one of the things that is a reward for those who acknowledge him is land. But he will suffer a fatal wound with one of the heads, and then he will recover that head, or he will come back from that. Verse 4, and they worship the dragon because he gave authority to the beast, and they worshiped the beast, saying, who was like the beast, who was able to wage war against him. Now, this may seem like it's figurative language. To me, it's not. Because, again, when we think about the times, see how wicked I don't think we can conceive now just how pure evil everyone would be during this time. Remember, Jesus said, just like in the days of Noah. So you see Satan giving him the authority, and then you see those who are worshiping and following the beast, okay, are saying they will worship him. They will acknowledge the dragon who gave him this authority. Verse 5, a mouth was given him to speak boast and blasphemy, and he was given to act 42 months or 3.5 years. And he began to speak blasphemies against the God, and to blaspheme his name and his dwelling, those who dwell in the earth. And he was permitted to wage war against the saints and to conquer them. And he was given authority over every tribe, people, language, and nations. All those who live on the earth will worship him, everyone whose name is not written from the foundations of the world in the book of life of the Lamb who was slaughtered. Now, that's kind of a snapshot of the man of sin, this world leader. back in Second Thessalonians chapter 2. Um, in the next study we're going to get further into this, but notice he says that he opposes verse 4 again. He opposes and exalted himself above every so-called God and object of worship, so that he sits in the sanctuary of God, publicizing that he himself is God. So this is what's going to be different about this man of sin. We kind of see this consensus of prophecies, right? This consensus of prophecies, where one of the characteristics, he will be arrogant beyond belief. He will receive his authority from Satan. Let me read this before I close out. We should be right here. Oh, verse 9 says, the coming of the lawless one is based on Satan's working. So my point is, we see all the consensus of prophecy that we know. For example, no man exists today, right? In other words, not in this capacity. But notice this. And by the way, let me say this. He will not be an atheist. Think about that for a moment. He will not be an atheist. He will be a beast, or you can say an antichrist. He will hate God. Notice, he will blaspheme God. So his hatred for God will be what drives him. All right, so I'll pick it up, guys, with the next study. Hopefully I get the screen also situated. We'll pick it up with verse 4 again and go and move on. Because now I want to notice there are two things that we're under thought here, that there are two things that has to happen before the day of the Lord can begin. So understand that. Two things that has to happen before the day of the Lord begins. And also, I'm going to show you why I think the rapture is a pre-tribulation position based upon this passage of scripture, because there is something that has to happen before the man of sin can be revealed. Now understand that. In other words, the man of sin cannot be revealed until something happens as well. And we'll get into that next time. All right, everybody, we'll see you in the next study. Like I said, try to get this screen here. All right, see you next time. See you in the next study.